Dallas, am I coming through okay?
Yeah, you sound fine so far.
Okay, great. And can you see the screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. I have an Apple, so we're working out different ways of handling the fact that Microsoft Teams is really based more for a PC. So that's why the check-in. I don't want to waste your time. Before we get started, I just want to share a little bit with you. The last couple of weeks, I have had such a difficult time trying to put the sorrow that's happening in our world right now in an okay place or a healthy place, so that there's an appreciation and an honoring of those who are struggling and suffering. But I stay healthy so I can do my part in this great work we get to do. And it seems as I was speaking to individuals that I get to mentor from other organizations, and they have shared some of the losses they've experienced, which is just so tragic. Staff and then individuals that they provide supports to. So I turn to the arts when I'm struggling, be it literature, poetry, which is literature. So I guess I should say prose, poetry, books related to kind of more of a way to actualize and become the best you can be. And additionally, art in the visual sense. So I came upon this poem, and I want to read it to you. It's only a stanza out of a longer piece, but it's written by Stanley Konitz, who is an amazing person. He has passed from this world, but he was poet laureate twice for the Library of Congress. And he also is a Pulitzer awardee and so much more. And he has experienced suffering in the various lived experience and history of his family as well. So I was looking for something. What can I find that I can kind of repeat over and over, almost in a mantra, meditative sort of way to stay healthy. And so he wrote this poem called The Testing Tree. And there's a piece in it that just spoke to me as I was reading it. And that's what I'm going to share with you. And what I love about it is it honors that we are in a difficult time at various points in this life we live. And it also honors that confusion is part of it, but there's hope. So again, the testing tree toward the end of the poem. In a murderous time, the heart breaks and lives by breaking. It is necessary to go through dark and deeper dark and not to turn. I am looking for the trail. And so that helped ground me. So I just wanted to share that with you just because so many of us, I think, have hit a point where it's just difficult to think about individuals and those who sacrifice, the essential workers who many of you are, the first folks online, and I mean in the line of duty, and then the doctors and other healthcare professionals that are sacrificing of themselves. So I just wanted to take that moment. I also, before we get into talking about informational interviewing, I want to read something, and and I love the way this woman writes about it. It just came out on the 27th. And she is a health science and technology journalist. And it is about how we're all working so differently in this virtual world we are in. And you will find, too, that there's some positive things, some things for the better. So her article is the Coronavirus Reveals Everything That's Wrong with Work in America. But it just might clear the way for more empathy, more flexibility, and more humanity. And for those of you who were on the Social Capital webinar that I did last Friday, may remember that I said the surveys that are going out, only 9% of individuals surveyed, that's 9%, want to return to a pre-lockdown phase or a pre-lockdown way that the world worked. The majority of folks want better. The strengths that they have seen that are so important is developing a sense of community in their local area, the positive effects on climate change, not having to drive just to get to a building, to have a meeting that could be just as effective virtually, and other studies are in the works. So it's interesting to see what's coming out. And as Governor Newsom in California said, work is going to look very differently about that. And I think I need to get closer to the microphone. I just got this nice little helpful hint that I might be breaking up. Am I, Dallas?
You sound a little bit warbly, kind of, but you sound okay now, so it's kind of an
Okay.
intermittent thing, I think.
Close enough. Thank you. So we've got these notifications now, so we can tune in. I might be feeling the whole screen in a way that's frightening, though. So Amanda Shepak, as I said, is a healthy living science and technology journalist. And I love the way she starts this. It's humorous. And I hope you find it so. But she's writing this article. And as I said, I just told you the title about how work in America actually isn't working. Many people are living from paycheck to paycheck and sacrificing their health to get to work to make money. So it's this vicious cycle. So she says, work looks different today. Work looks like your boss in a hoodie, the books on your colleague's shelf, a newscaster's cat, a dog barking in the background, and your 2-year-old busting into the room, noticing your manager and entire team are on video chatting. And he asks, or she asks, who are these people? Is him and his home? I love that there's that quoting. And she says, to further continue with the article and talking about how work is different and we are in people's homes and we are connecting in intimate and significant ways that we haven't before. So she goes on to say, yes, he is in him's home. And for the millions of us working remotely during coronavirus shutdown, we are all in him's home. So that's just kind of a metaphor. She continues, when I interviewed people for this article, asking them about the shifting landscape of work in the pandemic, I was surprised how many times I heard the word human and humanity and humanism. The coronavirus has shaken our sense of security, exposing chasms of instability and inequity along fault lines that already existed in the mantle of society. But it has also exposed our humanity, the private portions of our lives we pack away before commuting to the office, the fine lines we walk between personal and professional, the unraveling threads by which so many in the country are just barely hanging on. When we eventually merge from the panic state into whatever life after coronavirus looks like, experts are generally optimistic that work can foster our humanity. So that's encouraging. And I'm reading so much information about that in so many different settings. Along the same lines, I just want to read a little bit more because this is so important in how we begin to think about work with the individuals we love and care about who happen to have a disability. So Raj Sisodia, founder of the Conscious Capitalism movement, writes, under intense pressure of circumstance, human beings are capable of innovating rapidly. And you're seeing this. There's a small engine repair shop in a small town. He's doing everything virtually. So if you have a problem with your mower, you would have to have the ability to connect using technology. But he looks it over. He has the person crank or try to crank or pull out things, and he looks at them. And unless it's very, very complex, he can then send the parts to the individual and have a second call to help the person install them. A restaurant who has orders coming in monthly for food that they had planned to cook has shifted to grocery shopping, that they now can provide people with high-end, high-quality, healthy, good food. And health and exercise focus has changed so that a lot of that is happening virtually. There's this great video about this woman at a spa who does facials, and she had this whole video where people could join in and do the facial as they're working with her and what products to use, and she could answer questions. And then exercise salons, many people are saying, I wish we had done this before, because I don't want people to see me in these comfortable clothes while I'm trying to get my weight or my health in a better place. So those changes are going to continue, and that's happening everywhere. I want to continue just to read a little bit more. There's a level of human connection that can happen if you use technology in the right way. We are learning to work remotely and collaborate in different ways. We can operate in ways that are more efficient and still achieve what we want to achieve. Dan Schwabel of the research and advisory firm Workplace Intelligence, an author of Back to Human, called the current situation the grand remote work experiment, and it's looking good. People are going to want to keep doing it. Companies who don't offer flexibility are going to look strange. And what's interesting about that is they're talking about customization of jobs. That is exactly what we do. The notion when we started in the early 2000s with the customized employment grants, some of those notions were happening in the business world with corporations and bigger companies. But some of the notions of working flexible hours or working the task that the person's good at, but maybe not having all the tasks that were in a job description, all that has entered even more in the forefront in this world of changing work. So I promise you, I'm just going to read a little bit more. And this has to do with Davos. You may have heard of that meeting in Switzerland around high-end companies, wealthy companies, and that's some of the downside to this. But I just wanted to let you hear some of the things that they're saying. An increasing number of companies are revising their policies and practices, including those relating to diversity, inclusion, human resources, and accessibility, so that people with disabilities have better access to employment opportunities. The Valuable 500 campaign that was signed in 2019 at Davos and in collaboration with the World Economic Forum and Disability Network, called on CEOs of 500 companies to put disability on their board agendas, meaning that they're going to begin to increase the focus on hiring individuals with disabilities. And of that number, in 2019, more than 200 companies made the commitment. And finally, my last piece is Richard Branson. I love Richard Branson and the way he thinks so creatively. And he is very much a strong component. He's with the Virgin Group, Virgin Records, Virgin Books, Virgin Airlines, and some of those are he's shifted out of. But people with disabilities are an unrepresented minority. Employees who become more inclusive toward individuals with disabilities thus stand to gain a significant, but I'm trying to read quickly and it's not coming out, is it? A significant competitive advantage by tapping into an underutilized talent pool. And I want you to hear this because we touched on it last week, those of you who are here, and it's just about the value of people with disabilities and their friends and those who are part of their network. Aside from expanding the talent pool, being more inclusive toward people with disabilities can create significant revenue growth. In the US alone, people with disabilities control, and I want you to hear this, an estimated $544 billion in annual disposable income. Globally, when you include family and close friends of the individuals, the market reaches 2.3 billion people, and listen to this, who control an incremental $6.9 trillion in annual disposable income. Hence, individuals with disabilities represent a substantial and largely untapped market opportunity. So that could be a lot of customers in this work we do. So let me just make sure. I just wanted to make sure I'm not getting any cues or comments that I need to address. So now that we have kind of gotten this bigger piece around employing people with disabilities and it being promoted by the brilliant thought entrepreneurs in our world, and then also the changing way that people are thinking about work. And it's important in this work we do that we read information from the business world. We're no longer caretakers. We're no longer supporters of people in a building. We are bridges to people having an inclusive life in the world of business and then in their life holistically. And that's a very different language. It's a very different skill set. And I hope some of you did download the ODEP competency model around what's expected now, this employment work we do. What are the traits that people have to have when we hire them to be able to do this work? And what are the traits that we can teach, which are those technical things? But if people don't have an ability to connect, they don't have empathy, they don't have the ability to see the importance of economic development in this work we do, then you're going to come across as just not in the know. So read. And the information I just shared is great information that can be used as we talk about employment. So the next piece I want to do before we get into informational interviews is ground us in understanding best practices. And many of you probably already know this, but a best practice is a method or technique that is consistently shown to provide effective outcomes. There's been data collected. And put in just a simpler way, it's just following a standard way of doing what works, and that's called fidelity. So if we utilize best practices and do them in the way that we have a blueprint for, then we're going to get better outcomes. And so in employment, we think about discovery, vocational themes, the visual resume, interest-based job negotiation, and then post-employment supports. Our guiding principles for this work we do, whether it's around employment or helping people have inclusive lives in the community, has to be person-centered and individualized, not groupthink, person-think. Honor choices of the individual, support their ability to develop the skills for self-determination. And if you Google that, there are curriculums on the internet and lots of information about how to support people to become more in control of their decisions. Promote competence so that we're not increasing stigma or stereotypes of the individuals with whom we work. And then facilitate social inclusion in all that we do. The good stuff happens in the community. We know in our life that's the case, and it should be no different for individuals simply because they have a disability. So we're talking about community settings, community experiences, and community employment. And finally, we're getting closer and closer to digging into informational interviews. And let me just make sure again with Dallas, am I coming through okay?
Yeah, you sound fine to me.
Okay, great. So customized employment is what we're talking about, and discovery is what we're talking about. Discovery is employment person-centered planning around jobs, interests, preferences, skills, task, preferred task accommodation needs if that's present. So we're getting to know who the person is so that we can create the conditions of success as we move toward job development. So customized employment is when we match well the job seeker's interest, skills, preferred task, and conditions for success to the needs of a small business. And I emphasize small business because we're not talking about corporations, and I'll show you why. Small businesses tend to really be the heart of communities. So if small businesses aren't thriving, the community may die off, and we've seen that time and time again. Small businesses are more accessible. They control their own hiring and decision making. I've had people when we were doing job negotiation, because we'd gotten to that phase. Remember, we're following fidelity. We're not doing job development while we're getting to know the person in discovery. But as we were at the point of interest-based negotiation, I've been in experiences where the individual hired the person on the spot. Business owners tend to be flexible and creative because they wanted to be in control of what their work life is, what their career path is around self-employment or small businesses or micro businesses. And the small business owners are interested in the community. You're going to see a video with Nick where I completed an informational interview, and he speaks about his social mission, and he does it so beautifully. He is such a progressive business owner, small business owner. So the social mission he speaks to as the one that's more impactful. When people trust you and get to know you, they're going to come back again and again to the small businesses. Corporations tend to have a rigid hierarchy. There are stringent HR policies and procedures. They hire based on job descriptions, and with customized employment, we're not hiring based on a job description, we're creating opportunities. And you'll see examples and stories of that as we move through our time together today. And they have pre-hiring processes that really, I'm sure you are aware when I say the 80 or more questions for pre-hiring that the person has to go through. The purpose of that is to rule people out. And I only know this because I'm friends with someone who is the HR director of one of the huge companies. And I won't mention who it is because I want to be positive. And there is a place for hiring of individuals and corporations. And hopefully that's going to get better for people with disabilities, as I read about Davos and that commitment. And the fact that we're going to do business very differently as we get past where we are. The other piece, when I would go to see her, I had actually, it's huge. It's the corporation office is in Atlanta. And I had to drive my car over this contraption that looks like when you go to get something done to your car and they raise it up real high. I really thought I was going to lick the ground whenever I went over it because I just was confused as to what this was. They take a picture underneath my car for security and various other means of making sure whoever comes in has passed some kind of safety or firewall measure. So that right there is a turn off. And that, gosh, you don't see people as people. You see them as those to be frightened of when you focus something like that. And I had to put on this vest so people could see I wasn't someone employed by this company, so that I was distinguished out. At one point, I saw a water fountain, and I was just going to go get a drink while I was waiting, and two guards came and stopped me. So it really had very much a prison-like feel. So I thought, ooh, I don't think I'll do business with that mindset. And we're going to be doing some experiential stuff, but I just want to get a few things out. I know I'm talking a lot, but I'm going to check in with y'all in just a minute. So sometimes folks get confused about informational interviews because they'll hear about it being used in two ways. And it's important to understand that distinction and the purpose of informational interviews in these two different pieces of the process of customizing a job. We use it during discovery so that the job seeker can gather information from those who do that kind of work. They're the experts. We just need to know where in the community is the genius so that we can bridge people. There's no way we can know every aspect of what a career path looks like in this particular area of interest, or what the detailed tasks are of this type of job. So that helps the individual to be able to clarify vocational themes. And then we use informational interviews in a different way during job development. And I cannot wait to share some of the amazing stories of what work can be if done well and with fidelity. So we're going to do this check-in with folks. So if you want to unmute your mics to respond, or if you want to write in on the message board, I believe Patty and Dallas, y'all will help me get those questions because I can't see them on my end. So the different ways we use informational interviews, as I said, is during discovery or job development. So when we're refining vocational themes, is that informational interviews during discovery or is that job development?
Nancy, you're asking people to respond what they think that means?
I'm asking people to respond does the process of refining vocational themes and utilizing informational interviews in that process, does that occur during the discovery phase, which is one way we utilize informational interviews, or does that occur during the job development phase of using informational interviews? Does that make sense?
Yes, David Horn just wrote, and so did the initials KS in discovery.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So during discovery, we're not looking for jobs. We're not there yet. We're just simply answering this important question of who is this person? And so one of the outcomes that has to happen for discovery to be done with fidelity and to be successful is to help the person identify their interest under broad vocational themes. So if someone has an interest in cars, we don't want to say their vocational theme is cars. We want to talk about the vocational theme as transportation, because the interests that are tied to cars can be tied to so many, many other jobs. And so that's why we think broadly in terms of vocational themes before we even begin to identify specific businesses in the community. All right, the next one, does this occur during discovery or job development? Identify skills and tasks found in workplaces. And it might kind of be a tricky one.
Mark Nethercote writes both.
Mark, you got it.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yes. Because during discovery, we want the individual to talk to individuals who are employed in that kind of work. And what are those tasks and skills? Because that helps the person get closer to the kind of work that they want to do. All right. Discovery is used to clarify job seeker conditions of success. Does that type of informational interview just occur during discovery or job development?
No one's answering at the moment.
Is
this another one of those tricky questions?
No, it's not tricky. And I'm not going to move forward till at least one person responds.
And Tamoya just responded, discovery.
Yes.
And David Horn, discovery.
Excellent. David, you are on the ball here. So part of what we're looking for during the discovery process is what are the person's conditions of success. I worked with an individual who was identified as unemployable, which in our value base, we feel no one's unemployable. If the individual can identify with us tasks and preferences that motivate them, that get them excited to wake up in the morning, that give them a sense of value, then that's what we're looking for. And I'm speaking to this woman who I was told was unemployable. And when I dug into it, the jobs they developed for her were all early morning jobs. She takes medication that makes her sleepy at the time she was expected to go to work. Once we realized that by completing discovery and getting to know who she is in all those different ways, and we looked at her working after 3 p.m. because that's when she was in a better productive state, she was very much employable. She became a huge piece of making the particular company work and run smoothly. So we want to know that before we even get into developing the job. Okay, Informational interviews can improve employer engagement. Does that happen during discovery or job development? I'm sorry, I'm looking for a tissue because my allergies are acting up. While y'all are contemplating and identifying the answer that you feel makes sense, I'm going to quickly get a tissue. Sorry about that. And you know, I put so much thought and energy into the time that I get to be with folks like y'all. And so I have everything I need right at my fingertips. So I'm not taking time for stuff like I just said. I forgot I'd put the tissue right in my pocket, so I didn't need to leave.
So Nancy, you have a couple of answers for this one. You've got 2 people that say both, and 2 people that say job development.
So you know, both of the 4 folks who answered are correct. So during discovery, we're also getting to meet employers, and we're wanting to improve the way that we connect with them. How many times have you gone to a business and you've let it be known that you're looking for employment, and you've been told someone from your office was just here, can y'all get your act together? When in fact, it was someone who maybe does the work you do if you're an employment specialist, but was not from your organization. So we often get tagged to us some of the ways we used to help people become employed that really aren't that good. We're always asking for in terms of employers. And in this methodology, as you'll see, we're not doing that. So we want to make sure anytime we represent ourselves with an employer, whether it's during discovery or job development, that we're respectful. And you're going to see some of the ways that we do that. So I give you 4 correct, because in that case, it often you think of employer engagement and job development, which is correct. But there's also that side of just making sure we represent ourselves as good business experts around solving employer problems wherever we may meet them. Produces quality outcomes related to job seekers' preferences. Does that happen during discovery, or does it happen during job development? You may hear interest-based negotiation. That's when we're developing a job and getting to the point of helping the person become employed. So does that occur during the discovery phase or the job development phase?
Wendy Mercer writes both.
And again, nothing is, I mean, we could argue either way. The piece that I was getting at with this statement is that by the time we've completed discovery, we know the job seeker's preferences. And it's that information that begins to be considered in the job development phase. And that the preferences can't be identified until discovery is completed. But I appreciate you speaking up. And I'm sure if we were able to have a conversation, we would see how it can fit in both, because, you know, that's what we're about, flexibility. Just as long as we, again, follow the methodology with fidelity. All right. Informational interviews to address employer needs. So at this point, where do you think we're moving in the process? Do you still think it's part of discovery or part of job development? So we're not identifying employer needs, we are addressing their needs. We're part of the solution to the employment needs of small businesses. So would that be job development or discovery?
Tamoya says development. Wendy Mercer says job development.
Y'all are both right. Absolutely. And I need to move this little box so I can, oh gosh.
Nancy, we're not seeing your screen and we don't hear you.
Am I back with y'all?
You are.
And I have to say, as I said last time, no one wants me leading the path to how to use virtual technology. I learned by doing, and that was a doing moment. I'm not supposed to touch this little screen at the I thought I could just move it out of the way because I can't even see the final words of ensure creative job development. So by that question, we're wanting to make sure that creative job development is the outcome of what we're doing at this point in terms of informational interviews, discovery, or job development. So when would that be? The word's in there.
No one has yet responded, but I think you just told us the answer.
Yes, so it's creative job development occurs during job development. And I may have insulted your intelligence by putting that one in there. Okay, are there any questions or comments now that we've talked about the two ways that we use informational interviews? So I'm going to give Patty you just a moment to see what might come through.
Okay.
So I'm assuming there aren't any questions or comments at this point. We'll move on.
Okay, I don't see anything right now.
Okay.
But I can stop you if you'd like me to, if I see something pop up.
Oh, please do. Yes, because what's important is for folks to be heard and that we be able to address those things that are most important on your mind. So now we're going to focus on informational interviews during discovery. How does that look different than during job development? So we gather information, and everything I'm talking about is with the job seeker. So the job seeker is a part of this process with the employment specialist. And so just know that that's a given in everything we talk about. So gathering information from others is when the job seeker and the employment specialist meet with individuals who either have the same interest, are in the same kind of work that the emerging vocational theme appears to be, because we're trying to clarify them and narrow them down to 3 broad categories. And we're also building social capital anytime we get to connect with individuals. It's the opportunity to develop a social connection that may be beneficial. We can't do anything without the help of others. So it has become so commonplace, pardon me again, for informational interviews to occur through virtual platforms. That is not out of the norm. And informational interviewing has been in the business world at large. We utilize this method in the work we do because it works. And so connections are not limited to one's local community like they would be if we were doing the informational interviews in person. So really you have the whole world to connect through. So if I'm working with someone in a particular area, that individual and I will Google, who are some of the folks that have names, recognition for this type of work they do, are known as really good businesses in the community, to be able to indicate that the individual is connected with that person may be the vouching we look for when we know that 60% or more, based on whatever statistics you look at, of individuals obtain jobs because who they know or who they know knows. So in this, 20 to 30 minute call, already the person can expand their personal connections, obtain really important information that can help the job seeker understand their interest in that particular job path. And then also individuals can dig into helping the job seeker find their niche in a particular area of interest. In one area, the individual we were working with had some IT skills, and he was using this really rudimentary equipment to create these. It was around bullying. He had been bullied, and so he was creating these cartoons that were supposed to show how hurtful bullying is and how people can come together to stop bullying or decrease the incidents. And so we met with this media guru in this little town, and he was immediately able to share with us in the job seeker, these are the areas that you are so proficient in. These are the areas that I don't think will be the areas that you will be happy in doing. And then in this individual's specific situation, he recommended someone who teaches the type of skill sets that the person has that are an important part of the IT industry, and match them up. And the person was able to attend the local junior college to sit in on the classes. We couldn't have done that. We didn't have any power or connections in this small town, but this media specialist did. So the fact that he was able to connect with this person that could further help the job seeker is what made it happen. All right, and I've just put in these little slides every now and then, but we may not have any questions or comments at this point because we didn't a while ago, but I'm just going to pause. Okay, moving right along. So informational interviews are a conversation about career, skills, tasks, the type of business, and this is in discovery. Just throw out, and this is one thing that that I would do when I was supporting teams to achieve employment outcomes. I would tell the person, step out of the disability social construct that we've created, because that can be so intimidating. If you think about employment in this disability model, it's confusing. But if you think about employment in a community, it's natural. That's how we all began to become paid for our contributions through a job. So think about, you are working with someone who you care about, and you want to connect with someone who has expertise in this particular area. What's a question you would begin to start with as you and the job seeker are planning? Well, I'm going to move on, but I want you to know, I want your thoughts and any questions, comments you have honored. But I know we've got some time, and I want to make sure we don't get too rushed. So these are some of the questions. We want them to be open-ended. And if you're not used to asking open-ended questions, because so many times in this world that we work in that is with individuals with disabilities, we ask yes or no questions instead of questions that would enable the individual to communicate whatever it is that comes to mind when you speak of this particular thing. So when someone's asked a question and they choose to answer in a certain way, that's important, because that's what is important to them. So one of the questions could be, how did you become interested in this field? What skills, abilities, and attributes are essential to success? What advice would you give someone who's considering this type of job? And can you suggest anyone else I should contact for additional information? But all of these questions should be reframed using the job seeker's word preferences. These should be explained and have the job seeker talk about how they want to know that. What would they ask? Because it's an opportunity to learn, and we often change jobs, so we need to continue to grow our skills and how we interface around employment. So this is how we set up the informational interview. We're going to identify individuals of interest, and if someone's interested in a particular area of work, you're going to Google who in the community has a great reputation, who is known, or who outside of the community maybe has been one of the movers and shakers of this kind of work. You're going to call, email, or check out LinkedIn, because that's a very professional means of connecting with business owners. Be prepared. If you call, that the person may say, well, I've got a few minutes, I can talk to you. So if you call, be prepared to do the informational interview. And then we want to explain that the purpose is to obtain employment, not complete a job interview. So developing the brief introduction, whatever's important to the job seeker to be shared about who they are. I'm interested in learning more about. Would it be possible to schedule time to ask you a few questions, get your advice on, and to clarify my career goals? Again, stated in a way that makes sense for the job seeker. So one thing that we have to do, and we have been so bad at this in the past because we really weren't honing our skills to be peers in the world of business. But before you reach out to any company, whether it is during discovery or during job development, you want to learn as much about the history of the business, the culture of the business, the dress code, any kind of community involvement they're known for. And you're going to hear, as I said, Nick speak to some of that. Products or services that they provide, and any recognition awards. So anybody who goes into a business and says, what is your company? What do y'all do? That's a turnoff. It's so disrespectful. You haven't even, and I don't mean you as in y'all, but someone who does that has not even taken the time to learn all that they can. So there's a level of unprofessionalism that is very noticeable. Use your connections, remember social capital, search engines, and review their website to answer the bulleted areas above to the extent that you can. And for example, maybe there aren't recognition awards or community involvement on there. Then you could say, I learned as much as I can about your company, and I was just wondering, are you involved in any kind of community building or anything in the community to make a difference? Because again, they may be able to introduce you and vouch for you, and by you I mean the job seeker in you, with other businesses. So what's important is once you've identified who you want to meet with, you're going to use a virtual platform in this day and time, and possibly here on out. It's very common, even before the plague that has hit us. So make sure the job seeker knows how to do that, has access to that, and that you can be there with the person as the informational interview is completed. And practice the questions with the job seeker and talk about what is the information that they're wanting. And sometimes individuals, because we have just asked yes or no questions, people have lost the opportunity to know how to answer something when it's wide open in terms of how they feel about something. So pull in the person they feel the safest with, or who's the closest. So that can be done in a way that is supportive. And of course, we work in teams through this best practice process. And be prepared to facilitate the conversation when the actual connection is made, and do that in a respectful way so that it doesn't look like the job seeker stuck or at a loss, but that you're just part of the conversation to move it forward. Dress professionally. I have to tell y'all this true story. And when I think about it, I hope I don't do this today, I laugh out loud, and I feel badly for the person, but we are all at risk of this. So this gentleman was doing an informational interview, learning about the career path, etc., and duties and that kind of thing. And he could hear voices outside his window. And so he asked to be excused so he could close the window. And he did not have on pants. He had on a coat, a tie, and a beautiful shirt. And as he walked to the window, he was visible for the panel. It actually happened to be several folks who he was talking with at one time. Unfortunately, saw him in a way that told them a little bit more about him intimately. Thank the individual for their time and how valuable the information was. And again, this comes under the job seeker's name. It could be done through email or a handwritten note. So one quick review before we get into informational interviews around job development. Listen more than you talk. We are merely looking for advice. We're not asking anything of them other than just their knowledge about a particular area that they know a lot about. Don't use personal stories or talk about yourself. This is a very professional process, and it should be guided by the questions and not about who you are and you know, maybe what's happened to you that's not related to the world of work. Ask open-ended questions. I can't stress that enough. And always, whether you're doing informational interviews during discovery or as part of the job development piece, ask the following. What advice would you have for someone trying to start out in your business? And is there anyone else that I should talk to? Those are key. Now we're at the informational interviews related to job search and development. Any questions, comments?
Nancy, earlier when you asked the question, we had Wendy Mercer make the comment of asking a very kind of personal question, which is some of what I think you have asked about. As she states, what do you enjoy most about your job?
Yes. Oh, that's perfect. That's a beautiful question. That should be part of it, because that gives insights.
And I think what you're sharing too is asking very open-ended questions about the actual work that the person does and that the business does, but without asking specific questions around how much do you pay, what are the work hours, those kinds of questions. They're very different.
Again, that's going to be a turnoff because it sounds like you're inching your way toward asking for a job. And their thinking is, well, they came in and just wanted to know more about this type of career path or this type of job. So yes, it's all about the business and what the job seeker can learn from this genius, because Griffin-Hammis believes there's genius in all of us. So if someone's been working in that area, they can provide information that we absolutely cannot. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and go to the informational interview so you can see what that looks like. And then we're going to back up to the structure of it. And tell me if anybody needs a break, because this is an hour and a half. Okay, well, good, because I think we're going to need the whole hour and a half together. So this is Nick. He's a business owner in Atlanta, Georgia. His business is called Buckhead Thread Company. That's his website. Unfortunately, he has also been hit as a small business owner, but he's doing everything within his power so he doesn't lose his business. He has a wonderful, wonderful business model, and I'm going to introduce you to Nick. So, Dallas, please stop me. If Dallas and I practice, but as you know, for me, self-disclosing in IT stuff just still gives me a little bit of a fit sometimes. So we think we've got the volume at the right level, but if not, let me know. So I'm going to introduce you to Nick now. He's got the store. The Thread is a blog. He does this. He hosts this Thread Fest. And at the point that I did this, it was in 2017, and that was what was happening. But it's a yearly event. And then he's got the Book Club, and he's going to tell each of you about that. So this is an informational interview where I'm learning about Nick's business and his business needs. So this is around job development. And at this point, I'm doing informational interviews for job development, just so I can make sure to get to know the business. And if it looks promising, then I will bring the informational, the job seeker into the conversation. So this is just me learning more about Nick and his business.
Hey guys, welcome to Buckhead Thread.
Nick, thank you. And I'm sorry, man, this little computer is so touchy. Is it coming across clearly?
It seems okay. The video is a little choppy, but I think that's just something we'll have to deal with. I think that's just how Teams plays videos sometimes.
Oh, and it's so smooth on my end. Okay, and when we practiced it earlier, but is the volume loud enough?
Yeah, I think the volume is fine. It's fine for me on my end.
Patty, is it okay with you?
Yes, I could hear it.
Okay, and we have it on just about halfway, so I can up the volume if needed.
Okay.
But you say it's fine, right?
Well, what I heard so far. So once you start playing, we can let you know more if it's not.
I think I blasted Dallas when I played it before. All right. Here we go again, and I'm not going to interrupt.
From Buckhead Thread.
Nick, thank you so much for taking the time in your busy day to meet with me. As I had shared, part of my role and my work is to get to know businesses and find out what their business needs are. And the best way that I can do that is to spend time getting to know businesses. So one thing that I absolutely am impressed with and that immediately I found engaging was how you bring in this sense of community around the products that you sell that are part of your business. So could you tell me a little bit about that?
It was pretty much organic. When I started my business, most of my business came from word of mouth and people I met, just hanging out in different places, going to different events. And we've been able to serve a lot of our community just by talking.
So the energy, the enthusiasm, the passion that is part of why you are doing the work you're doing probably resonated with the folks that you are connecting with. I'd love for you to share more about that.
Let's see, we'll start with the thread. The thread is our blog where we keep people who visit our website up to date on all our big events and do recaps of all our big events to keep them up to date on what's coming up and all the different things we're doing. It gives them a place to get involved. Check it out.
Does everyone have a part in that, or do you head that up?
Well, sometimes it's me, or we also have other contributors whoever's involved in a particular event. I like to allow other people's perspectives rather than just mine. The Thread Fest, that's our festival we have coming up. We will incorporate art, fashion, style, music in one event.
What cued me that your business is a progressive business based on a different way of thinking about the 21st century workplace is that you speak of artisans that have focused in on a particular aspect of the components of what make the Thread Fest. Everything from musicians, writers, poets, craft brewers, and culinary arts.
The Buck Club is another way we engage with our community. It's a list that they sign up to be a part of where we get their email and we can reach out to them instead of them having to come to our website. So we like to engage with our customers and bring them our Atlanta lifestyle products.
Nick, what would you say you're most proud of with Buckhead Thread?
Well, what I'm most proud of with Buckhead Thread is the company itself. I'm proud to be here because owning your own business can be difficult and there's good times and bad, and I'm just proud to have made it through all the obstacles and we're here today.
For folks who are successful in small businesses, do have to have that resilience.
Definitely, there are going to be good times and bad times, and or hard times, and the hard times are really what will make the company. One experience I had while I was at Ben and Jerry's, I noticed on the wall they had a product mission, a social mission, and an economic mission. And I wanted to create Buckhead Thread's missions in those same areas, and in doing so, I found out that my social mission was probably the biggest part of our business. Sales are great and they're necessary, but what we experience in our community is much more rewarding and inspiring. Our social mission to inspire the people, create new perspectives, unite everyone under the commonality of love for art, fashion, and style, music is probably our most impactful area of this business.
What are some of the stressors that you're currently experiencing as the owner of a small business?
Well, some of the stresses I have day to day, we have, an abundance of phone calls, emails that I have to respond to, all those type of administrative aspects of business take me away from doing other designs and making sales and doing promo. I have a lot of different directions I get pulled in. That tends to cause some stress.
Part of what might make your work flow go more smoothly would be if you're not getting involved in some of the initial contacts that come into your business, where someone could weed through those and figure out what are the skill sets and as the business owner require your attention or input, and those that could be handled at a different level. Would you say that might be an area that would be a benefit? And then often we find that can make a business run more smoothly. Then you're freed up with your creativity to really focus on that product design, product development, product experimentation as well.
Yeah, if I had a person who was the right match for a particular task, such as answering phone calls, going through emails, answering emails, other aspects, I could definitely see how it would free me up to tackle some new frontiers for our business, even help us expand into new products, new designs. Just give me more time.
That might be a way that we could help you. And part of the way that we're able to do a really good job of matching a potential employee or an applicant for the interview is to get to know exactly what those tasks are. Would it be possible for, at some point in the future, me to come in and just spend a little time getting to know what those tasks are, what the culture feels like around making sure those are handled the way you would want them handled, to see if we could help address that need?
Yeah, that would be great. I really appreciate that.
Are there products or services that you would like to grow to be able to expand into these areas?
Well, we would need probably a few different things like an embroidery machine or machine that prints on other surfaces other than clothing, like on pens or on mugs. Other printing equipment would really help us out.
There are some tangible equipment that could enable bucket threads to grow and expand into these areas, as well as provide an individual who has an interest in the ability to learn those skills to be a part of that expansion that would make your business more profitable and probably more efficient and effective. So you're not tied to having to do every single artisan piece of the products you provide. Here are a couple of possibilities that we could have future conversations around as we work with individuals who are seeking opportunities in this artisan business that you have that might end up being a win for everyone.
Sure, sounds great. I'd love to talk more about it.
Okay, I'm going to tell y'all a secret. I had my son Walker edit it so that it got to the heart of what an informational interview is. But when I first did that, I overtalked, and I often will use segments of it for folks to critique what could I have done better. And so I suggest, as you are practicing to do informational interviews virtually, or if at some point you do them face to face. Video yourself with the job seeker and with y'all asking the questions so you can critique that. One thing I know about myself is I have social anxiety, and I had to deal with that since I was a child. I was so shy. And one of the ways that I ineffectively handled it until I became more aware of it, and definitely watching myself on video, while as painful as it can be, was so helpful, is I will yammer on after I've made a statement in a way that is not helping at all. It's not getting to the clarity of what's happening. So I've changed. I've made note of that. And while, the world's not going to come to an end, or people aren't going to throw you out or anything like that, it's just important to be succinct and then to listen. So that was so helpful for me to see myself. So use video to practice. I don't know why in this work we do, we never practice. Think about sports and dance and hair cutting, and of course those professions that are life-saving, etc. Individuals practice over and over before they get in the real life situations. So I can't say how important practicing is. And no, if you make a mistake, it is okay. I can't tell you how many times I've said, I did not phrase that well, or that didn't come out the way I meant it to. Let me start over, because that makes you human, and being human makes you relatable. It is okay. And I'm talking about in informational interviews with businesses when I'm developing the job. And it brings it to a more intimate level in the sense of humanism, person to person. So don't feel you've got to be perfect. None of us were as we started out, and none of us are now. We still make mistakes. But if you come into this work with your heart in the right place in terms of values, I don't mean a pity model. That's the worst thing in terms of how we can promote employment for people with disabilities. That increases stigma and stereotyping and helplessness. And the individuals we love and care about are an important underserved part of the workforce. So I say that, and I used to tell folks when we were moving from a facility-based traditional model to community-based in the early 2000s, as long as your heart's in the right place and you're genuine, that's not going to be a negative. Or if it is, that tells you more about who that person is. And sometimes it's important to see those aspects, because we probably wouldn't want anyone to work in that place. So every time you are preparing for an information and interview, research a company. I was going to have us do this, but we're not, because of the time, and it's just kind of not real manageable when we have several individuals on the call. But in smaller groups, this is what I do. I have the individuals choose a small business, and remember why we work with small business owners, and they have to research as much of the company as they can using technology. And then we debrief, and then they complete the informational interview and prepare a presentation of how it went, what occurred, learning lessons, and of course the answers to those questions. So I'm going to quickly just go back to some of these questions, and I want to make sure that we stop in enough time for y'all to share anything you want to. So the piece that is the higher skilled expectation of having people with disabilities to become employed is that we have to be creative, we have to be flexible, we have to be able to move into businesses and see opportunities, to see where their needs or their work is really hitting a block, or the flow is not there, because those are all needs. And sometimes people are so in the moment that they don't realize, they don't stop and think, this isn't working well here, and this is why. They're just, coming in and working hard day in and day out. And I think that's why right now has, with the virus, has resulted in an opportunity to really think, when you see another side of how we can do things more efficiently that have consequences for the environment in a positive way, that some of this innovation is coming out. So it should be done with a manager, owner, or key person. Avoid HR simply because often that is someone who is there to control more than to look at creative options or needs. And then as you are moving through the space, what task skills would be a good match for the individual? And I gave you a link. Dallas put it on the link to this training, and it gives you all the questions that you can use as kind of the framework you might want to work from as you and the job seeker review them, and some cueing. So remember, you have the opportunity to help the job seeker become more independent in all these different steps: how to think about questions, how to think about interactions with others, what information is needed and important. So I'm only going to go through these, although I've listed them all, but I want to just show you some of the things that came out in informational interviews. One of the companies that I did an informational interview with was, what are you most proud of regarding your business? And they said it's a family culture. They have a low turnover rate. So someone who needs that sense of belonging, you want to look for a culture like that. Some individuals don't. They just want to come in and they are so focused on the work, they're not going to do well in a culture that has more of a family view of the employees. So we're setting them up for failure if we don't match them well to the tasks that are needed and the culture. Stressors, in this situation, you heard Nick, in this situation, it's the older mom and pop shop. And remember, think about your audience. Probably older mom and pop shops aren't going to be relying on a lot of high-end technology. So you've got to know that audience, and having a conversation with that generation of workers might look very, very different than someone who has just gotten out of college and they've started their own business. So know your audience and know what will be important in terms of how you interact with them, and not throw out social media and technology if that's not a part of who they are or who they want to be. Many people don't like technology and they just don't want to learn it. And that is okay. What keeps your workflow? In this case, they had no central person to answer the phone from 10 to 3, and it just was ringing off the hook, and people would try to grab it. So it really looked like the business was unflowing in terms of being responsive to the needs of folks calling in. So that was a very easy fix to match the person, both to be able to do the task as well as to be a part of the type of culture. We always dig into both of those. So I'm going to move on, since you do have the questions. So again, we kind of covered this because it's the art of informational interviewing. It's grounded in the same important aspects of leveraging social and economic capital. Is there anybody you know in this particular area who can hook you up with someone, whether you are working with the job seeker around learning about the job and discovery or beginning the job development piece? Prepare and practice questions. I think I've said enough about that. That has to occur in both ways. We use informational interviews, listen more than talk. Boy, did I have to learn that. And it's such an improvement. Observe everything, because that may give you clues as to what can result in a customized employment opportunity. And never forget, is there anyone else I should contact? So setting up the interview again, and I'm so sorry, I'm just going through this. I had some interactive stuff I wanted us to do, but I want to really make sure I leave enough time for y'all to ask questions. So you're going to make a phone call, drop by. If that is a situation that becomes available as we move through social and physical distancing. It's really not social distancing. We can still be social. It's physical distancing. And then introductions from others, asking someone who may know that person if they would bridge the connection. Think about languages is so critical. We use more jargon in the disability world that really makes us that weirder from the community at large. So think about what you're doing. And I don't know that career counselor is the best term. I use that because in the business world, that's understood. And I asked friends who were CEOs, I said, what would make more sense? And they indicated, if we talk about a career counselor, we're part of economic development by increasing the number of individuals who are working. Keep it conversational. It shouldn't be a monologue from the employment specialist or the job seeker. We're listening. We're there to learn. Avoid disability system jargon. I just can't stress that enough. It is such a turnoff because people who are running businesses want to find good employees to do the work. Whether or not we're linked to a disability system is not something they're interested in. So think about how I think there's no better rule of thumb, and it's across all spiritual belief systems. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So if I am entering, if someone is entering my business, what would I find respectful? And it's learning about my business and not pulling me into some system that they're a part of that, it's just not, it's so closely aligned to the pity model. It's not respecting the individual who's seeking employment. It makes them other. And anything in this work that we do that makes someone other is not good. It's really kind of that rule of thumb. Honor the ethics of disclosure. I've seen people go in and say, hey, I work with people with disabilities and I'm, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what you've just done is identified someone as having a disability if they're connected with you around your efforts of developing a job. Now, many people have an obvious disability, but we don't go pointing that out. We are not there because we work in a disability system. We are there to learn about the business in the most typical, normal way that anybody does, and anything that makes us step out of what the community at large is, and we start defining it in this disability way. You've really screwed up an opportunity that could go in a different direction if we use this work with fidelity. So, rules of engagement: listen more than you speak, Nancy. And we all have our little quirks. So the videoing, the practice is going to really provide you with insights. Do the research. Don't dominate the conversation. Think before you speak. Avoid value judgments. Do not interrupt. Do not overshare. Be relaxed, friendly, and maintain good eye contact. And some folks have a hard time with that, whether the person's and someone helping the individual become employed, or the job seeker. So if you have them look right here where the pineal gland is, if you know what that is, between the eyes, just a tiny bit up, it looks as if the person is looking at the individual they're connecting with. And then the person over time typically becomes more comfortable. But that can be kind of a safe way to improve eye contact. Don't forget the supply chain. Talk to the folks in your agency, the board members, the CEO, people people the job seeker knows. Again, to look at who in the community might be a good person to talk to, who you have a personal connection with, or someone in your realm has a personal connection with that can vouch for you. Anytime someone can vouch for you, you're one step ahead as well. All that we do should result in employment. Discovery in and of itself is not the end. The end is someone is actually working. And so when we are at the stage of job development, these are the things that can be customized. The task, the person may have resources that would help them do the work, hours of employment, pay, and accommodations. So I'm going to quickly tell you these stories because I love them. And there are so many stories of people who have become citizens who are working in which it was person-centered and not disability system focused. Negotiated wage job, doing the information, and I'm going to go through these pretty quickly because we're really out of time, but I want to just share you quickly what this can look like. The problem was a lot of mothers have book clubs there, and they have to bring their children at different points during the day. So she needed someone who could work with children in the child's book section to free up parents to have this time for their book club. Resource ownership, TARI. One problem that they had is they were getting the numbers based on spreadsheets for a car. Someone, the owner of a car, brings it in. You have to write down the number on the car that's specific to that car, and TARI kept messing up. We looked at what's the greatest improvement, because people without disabilities, obviously, it shouldn't even be framed that way, mess up the numbers too. So there's this gun-like zapping thing that Tools and Equipment under VR was able to purchase, hardly any cost. And she would zap the vehicles, and then she would come in and zap the computer, and that solved that problem. And that was a headache. Nobody wanted that job, and TARI loved it. Business within a business, ARI, a mechanic shop with high-end cars. They're all foreign-made, small business, required the mechanics to change uniforms in between fixing a car and meeting the owner. That required about 3 uniform changes a day. The mechanics were PO'd with the CEO and owner because they're tired. They have to go home and wash 3 sets of outfits to bring back. So a business within a business was worked out where a gentleman, again, through funding that was available in all the ways that you'll learn about as you are getting into areas of work incentives and VR funding, purchased 2 machines, a bookcase. The folks gave their uniform, checked out the sized pants and the size shirts they needed from the shelf, and the owner paid a % of the profits and the cost. The person had a living wage within this business within a business by the owner taking a % of the profits, and all the others went to ARI. So business within a business, you don't have to own rent, you're not paying light bills, you don't have the cost that a business owner has. You've established your business within an existing business, and you pay a % of your profits for that luxury. And I'm not going to go through self-employment. Well, yes, I will, because it's kind of interesting. Self-employment, big headache for Avon folks in this particular area in Georgia, was they had no place to store all these products that come in. I never would have known. There are all these hidden jobs you've got to dig into as you're getting to know different businesses. And so the big issue was, where can people store these things? It's taking up so much room in their house. Debbie and Lisa, who are best friends and love makeup and health and spa related stuff, had a business where people could have the products delivered to them. They would inventory them, and then the particular representatives would come and pick up their products. So it was a headache that solved a big a big business need for this area. Go on our website and read Brian's story. If you look at the top right corner, you're going to see Brian after he got out of high school. And if you look at the left-hand corner, you're going to see Brian, who has been employed for over 14 years in the job that was customized in the early 2000s. The woman with him is the business owner. It's just one of those stories to show, if we do this work right, people can have wonderful careers. All right, so I'm ending here. You know, it's a bad idea if it increases stigma, reinforces stereotype, is not individualized or person-centered, and decreases the opportunity for community inclusion and development of those typical relationships that are important to us all. And I include that no matter what the topic is. So we're done, and I am so sorry. What time is it? I went over 6 minutes. Is anyone still out there? Because I can't see. If there is anyone who has questions, let me know, and I so apologize for going over 6 minutes. Patty, anything coming in, or do you think that's a wrap?
We are getting some wonderful comments. People are saying great job and thank you. I don't see any questions at this moment, but we can leave it open for just a minute, and
Well,
I think that would be good.
You know, when you're up here doing stuff like that, and by that I mean because the webinar's over, you just want to make sure that you're making a difference and you're presenting information. We call it knowledge transfer in a way that makes sense. So thank you for sharing that. You think that's it, Patty?
I think that's it. I'm not seeing any more comments other than just a few people saying thank you and telling you did a great job.
Oh,
thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. And remember, just look regularly on our post for the conversations that occur every Friday from 1 to 2, and then trainings that are occurring at other points throughout the week. We're trying to give back and let you know we care about you during this rough time. So thank you all, and you have a great day and rest of the week. Bye-bye.